basically your story opening serves as a promise to the reader. Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm taking part in the first ever AuthorTube seminar series where we are going to be discussing story openings. I also brought resources. Can I set this somewhere? That's a resource that's gonna fall. This is a resource that will stay up. And here is another resource. Oh, I've done it. Real quick, first up, I'm gonna link everyone down below who's also participating in this seminar series, and I want to give a special thanks to the Story Detective for putting all of this together, and of course Danny for continuing to reach out to me and making sure that I saw it. And I can't wait to hear what everyone else has to say and also find some new AuthorTube friends through this. Cheers to that, I guess. I don't know. Now, Robert's whole approach to this is that we can all learn something from each other, whether we're already a traditionally published author or an indie published author or a novice writer, or even people who have been on AuthorTube for a while or those just starting out. So I'm really excited to see where this seminar series goes in the future. But yes, today is story openings. Also, as always, I do not consider myself an expert nor a teacher, so I'm thinking this is going to be more me and you sort of commiserating on how tough story openings can be, which is so funny because story openings are like my favorite part. In fact, it's usually the openings of my novels that's like the first scene I imagine. I go through like a whole thing when I'm brainstorming, and usually I have the character first and then I'm thinking about like my premise. I see sort of a flash of this first scene and it makes me, the writer, want to know more about this character and this world and what they're about to sort of go through. Now, my first resource, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I'm bringing up because I freaking hate this story opening. I hate it. If y'all have watched this channel for a while, you have heard me wax poetically about this book. I wrote copious amounts of fan fiction about this series. It starts with the Dursleys. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley waking up on a dull gray Tuesday. Edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind. He was in a very good mood until lunch. Now, do we need to set the stage with the horrible, unremarkable Dursleys? Yeah. Do I like it? No. Did I have to reread this multiple times as a child to get through to the second chapter? Yes. So to me, bad opening. Bad opening. Great book. Great series. Bad opening. Harry Potter succeeds wildly, obviously, in spite of its opening. I'm putting this out there because I think that openings are not necessarily as make or break as people make them out to be, especially because some people might have loved that opening. I don't know who you are. If you are one of them, comment down below and let me know. However, of course, not every story is Harry Potter. I talked recently in my co-writing vlog about how I thought me and my co-writer started off our story in the right place. I feel like that's always a concern when you're reading because you don't want it to be too long before we get to the aha, this is what you promised me kind of thing, but you also don't really want it to be immediate. We need a little bit of a build with the characters and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of good things. And that's because I have struggled through this myself before when I haven't started a story in the right place. Let me present to you the resource that did not want to stay up. This beautiful thing, the first story that I ever printed out, my new adult superhero story that may never see the light of day. I rewrote this thing, excuse you, so many times from so many different angles. Sometimes I started too soon, sometimes I started too late, sometimes I didn't have the big aha moment until chapter 3 when really it needed to be in chapter 1. So on, so forth, until eventually I got it right, because I think that is so important. To the point that if I don't have it right, if I can feel it in like my heart of hearts that I don't have it right, it is hard for me to continue the rest of the story. I'll continue it, but it's like I doubt every step of the way, and I know it's because I don't have that first opening scene. Because the reason I think I continued Harry Potter even in the 3rd grade was because there was some amount of hype surrounding it that I knew it had to be better than what its opening few pages were. Personally, I think the opening few pages is what the reader is going to judge you the most harshly on, and that brings me into like the mind of a reader. How I personally sort of choose to buy a book, choose to pick up a book, if the book's worth my time. Now, not everyone is me, but as I only have my experience, I'm gonna share it with you. Step 1, the spine of the book, which should, of course, include the title. Then we got the front cover, enticing. Then I go to the back cover, where I will read a little bit about what the story is, or like the front flaps if it's a hardcover. And then finally, I will flip to the first page. All of these first bits arguably speak more to the genre expectations anyways, and don't say as much about the individual book, because this is like marketing material. So once it's past the, is it the genre I like? Does it contain some of the tropes that I'm interested in or promise to sort of flip it on its head? Will it be introducing me to new concepts? Then it's finally time for the author to shine on the first page. So of course the question becomes, what am I personally looking for? And I think there's some sense of immediacy that needs to happen, even in this book. As unremarkable as I find the next couple of pages, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Perfect Drive are proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. This is promising me something already. Then it sort of goes backwards a little bit. Again, too much about the Dursleys for me personally, but there is a promise sort of laid out in the first couple sentences. That's the kind of immediacy I'm looking for. I find that contemporary does a marvelous job at this. Let me get another example. We're gonna go with the Geography of You and Me. I picked it up because it's blue and it was within my arm's reach. I have not read this book. On the first day of September, the world went dark. Okay, already. You see? There's a promise. But from where she stood in the blackness, her back pressed against the brassy wall of an elevator, Lucy Patterson had no way of knowing the scope of it yet. Okay, and now we're introduced to our character. Another way I've found contemporaries really good at this is throwing out an immediate sort of punch on the voice of the main character that we're going to be following through for the next however many hours it takes us to read this book, right? Let's pick up this one. Again, within my arm's reach, I have not read Outlander. The first chapter is, it wasn't a very likely place for disappearances, at least at first glance. Already I'm getting a promise of something. Mrs. Baird's was like 1,000 other Highland bed and breakfast establishments in 1945. Clean and quiet with fading floral wallpaper, gleaming floors, and a coin-operated hot water geyser in the lavatory. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Get in. Oh, lying down. Oops. While I think it's important for contemporary to typically go in the sort of strong voice direction, immediately kind of grabbing our attention that way, I think it can be equally as successful in fantasy when you start out with the world. So neither of these means that there's a specific method, but all of it kind of goes back to sort of promising me something. And now when I say sense of immediacy, I don't necessarily mean that we need to open up on our character in the middle of the battlefield about to dodge the knife that is fated to end them or whatever, you know? I think I just need this idea of the now that's important and how that now is going to change over the course of the book almost. So like the first chapter in a lot of ways acts as a baseline. If we go back to Harry Potter, we're promised that there's like no weirdness. These people are not who you suspect to have any sort of remarkable things happening in, near, or around them. Okay, that's our baseline for the world that we're about to explore. I think it's that I personally like to feel a weight for where I am at the beginning. A weight where the character's at, where is the like world at, like if there's a war, what is the sort of thing that we're going to see transform over the course of the novel that when I look back at the end of it, I can see a big, like, there's a distance between the beginning and the end. Yes? Does that make sense? Am I making any sense? This is why I'm not an expert. Now, I'm not necessarily someone who likes to follow a set story structure, but going back into the beginning acting as a baseline, I think that all stories have some part of like the character changing the world changing the character, or like a kind of both version of this, which again, you need the beginning to show that that change has happened in the end. Now, having said all of that, baseline, promise, still enticing, I guess. You know, ultimately, it needs to be interesting, which I feel like is the hard part too. But we'll pretend that those are my personal rules that I attempt to follow. I have found, as I've recently been rereading my Camp NaNoWriMo story, let me see if I can find the exact note I made, because I did not do this quite as well as I would have wanted. So I had my notes, chapter 1, a little bit in chapter 2, and then I went into chapter 3 and I did a better personal job of sort of putting them out. But I don't know if you can see this note. It says that I need to merge these two chapters, or need to merge a bit more. Because what I found in my reread is that while I had the kind of punch of the voice and a good sort of baseline, the actual thing that's gonna happen wasn't necessarily as convincing until the end of chapter 2. It goes back to the promise. I think I wasn't promising the reader yet what was going to happen or what they could expect to happen. I had it in there a little bit, but as the reader, I want it there a little bit more. In my Meridian Map series, the start of the first book is kind of a slow build as we're introduced to this world and the wedding that's about to happen to join this kingdom and queendom together, and you need to see all of that for the weight of the rest of the book to really make sense. However, there's this whole thing about pirates because that's what the story's really about. So throughout the first chapter, before we even sort of see the pirates, we're getting hints at something is wrong. That's all I really mean by a promise of what's to come. So I think that's it for all of the advice I can give, or all the things that I personally look for when I'm trying to fix my story openings. And also, because you like to write sort of like what you like to read, it's what I look for in books. Please do comment down below. Let me know what you think of story openings. What is the hardest part for you? Do you think there's an additional factor besides the 3 that I sort of named? And can you tell me about a time when you realized that you started a book in the wrong spot? I would love to hear about it. But that is gonna be it for me. I am so excited to see what everyone else in this collaboration has decided to talk about. Hopefully this is what you wanted, Robert. If it's not, I'm so sorry. And I just can't wait to get some more tips on this, especially from people who have more experience with publishing than me. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon with a new video. Bye! An immediate sort of pack. That was loud. First up, real quick, I'm gonna link everyone down below who's also participating in this seminar series. But